I had a meeting with 8 survivors of abuse of power, conscience, and sexuality. Picking up on what they've told me, I would like to put these crimes before the mercy of the Lord and ask forgiveness for them.
Y pedir perdón por ellos. Pedimos perdón por los abusos en Irlanda.
We ask forgiveness for the abuses in Ireland, abuses of power and conscience, sexual abuses on the part of qualified members of the Church.
De manera especial, pedimos perdón.
In a special way, we ask forgiveness for all the abuses committed in various types of institutions run by religious men and women and other members of the Church.
Y de otros miembros de la Iglesia. Y pedimos perdón.
And we also ask forgiveness for all the cases of labour exploitation to which so many young people were subjected.
Pedimos perdón por las veces.
We ask forgiveness for the times that, as a church, we have not looked at the survivors of any type of abuse with compassion in the search for justice and truth and with concrete actions.
Y verdad con acciones concretas. Pedimos perdón.
We ask forgiveness for some members of the hierarchy who did not take care of these painful situations and kept silent. We ask forgiveness.
Pedimos perdón. A muchas madres solteras.
We ask forgiveness for all those times in which many single mothers were told that to seek their children who had been separated from them, and the same thing being said to those sons and daughters themselves, that this was a mortal sin.
Esto no es pecado mortal. Es cuarto mandamiento.
This is not a mortal sin. It is the 4th commandment. We ask for forgiveness.
Mantenga y acreciente.
Lord, keep and increase this state of shame and compunction, and give us the strength to commit ourselves to work so that it never happens again and for justice to be done.
Y para que se haga justicia. Amén.
The Pope applauded here at the Phoenix Park earlier at the conclusion of those remarks, which were the remarks that he made almost at the outset of the Mass here this afternoon. Michael, sometimes people listen to Francis and they hear him read his speeches and comments and wonder, is he really speaking in his own voice? And obviously he has people who write material for him. That seems to be unmistakably the voice of Francis.
I think so, and also the fact that it was delivered in Spanish. He has spoken in Italian during the visit for the most part. So that to me gives the impression that he wrote it himself, and it was probably written perhaps last night, perhaps early this morning, based on his reflections, having met with the survivors in the Apostolic Nunciature yesterday. There was quite a bit of confusion in the press centre, actually, because obviously many of the journalists who travel with the Pope are Italian and speak Italian, but they don't speak Spanish, so there's quite a bit of panic when he started reading it in Spanish. So it seems to me, from Francis, it seems to me heartfelt. I don't think that you could dismiss that as a box ticking exercise. I think the emphasis on the hierarchy, the use of the term concrete gestures, and laying out the various aspects, because sometimes, and I know institutional survivors feel acutely about this. Sometimes we talk a lot about clerical sexual abuse. We talk about priests who were abused, parishioners who were abused in parishes by priests, but there's maybe not the focus on mother and baby homes or institutions. Naming things like labour exploitation I mean, there's been a resistance to name those things directly. There's been a desire to use sometimes euphemisms. We've heard sometimes religious orders in the past say it's a great source of regret to us that anyone felt uncared for in our institution, as if not hearing the real experiences that people had. And I think it sounds to me like he genuinely did hear those experiences last night, and I know from the 3 or few survivors who have been speaking from that meeting so far, that was certainly their sense of the meeting, and I think those words speak to that.
And he prefaced his remarks by saying that he met 8 survivors last night, and that is it's a response, it would seem, to that engagement that he had, that very personal encounter.
I think for me there's been 2 pieces to this, in the sense that very much the debate and the engagement around survivors, not just in terms of Pope Francis' engagement, but what we saw happening, the outcome of Pennsylvania, etc. They're about legacy issues. They're about abuse that took place in the past and how it has or has not been dealt with. And they are very much the concerns of the global north. But where the Catholic Church is growing in the global south, are in many cases in countries where there are, right now, very few, in many cases, child protection structures or none, and where corporal punishment is still legal. And in many cases you have vocations emerging in those countries, very much in the way in which vocations emerged here historically. So you had many people who genuinely heard a call, but you had also poverty and lack of opportunity driving people into religious orders. And for me, Brian, the issue is not only the sorrow of Francis about the legacy issues and the institutional abuses of the past, but also what is he going to do about how the Church currently operates to ensure that there isn't a future generation.
I mean, he does conclude by saying we must commit ourselves to ensure that this never happens again, and that justice is done, Michael. And justice involves accountability, people being held to account.
It involves accountability. It involves, not trying to fight statutes of limitation being taken away. It involves handing over files. It involves compensation. It involves, a lifelong work. Sometimes I get the impression that people in the Church can think that the work of reaching out to survivors is a work of apologising to them, telling them that you regret what happened in the past. But this is a lifelong work, and people have been calling for files to be handed over. They've been calling for further investigations, for further redress, and I think the Pope is really saying to the Church, really saying to the bishops, that everything that justice requires must be done here, and it's the survivors who decide what is justice, not the Church.
Well, now, as you've seen from our pictures, as you can see behind us, as we're broadcasting to you from our